good.
Oh, I forgot the dessert. It's out there now. Pumpkins.
Oh.
We can go out. Oh, it is good.
So thank you all for bringing wonderful things to eat. I have to tell you, it's probably my favorite part of it. So, no. Well, yes, it is. All right. Well, let's begin with our traditional prayer. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has made us holy through his commandments and commanded us to engage in the study of all the words of Torah. Please, Adonai, our God, make the words of your Torah sweet in our mouths and in the mouths of your people, the house of Israel, so that we, our descendants, and the descendants of your people, the house of Israel, may all know your name and study your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, Adonai, who teaches Torah to his people, Israel. Amen. Amen. And Don is under the weather, so I'm here by myself.
We're with you.
Yes, you are, of course. But you don't make up
No, no, we don't.
for the presence of my wife in my life. So,
You're right.
I'm glad to hear that.
Does your missus have an extreme cold?
she is under the weather, yes.
No, it's an extreme cold.
But she should recover very soon. Thank you for your prayers and thinking of her. All right, so Chayyei Sarah, the life of Sarah. Today we read the third section of this portion. So the first two talk about Sarah's passing, her death at 127 years old. And Avraham, by faith, how he purchases the burial site, Makhpelah. I was going to try to play a couple of videos this morning, but I just couldn't get the technical stuff to work. But I'm sure many of you are pretty familiar with Makhpelah in Hebron. Some of you have even been there. One of the, yes.
The tombs of the patriarch?
Yeah, and one of the most remarkable things is that there's a stone staircase.
Yeah.
Hang on a second, I gotta grab a battery here just a second.
It's 4,000 years old.
Sorry. There's a stairway that dates back to the time, actually before Abraham. It dates back to 700 years before Avraham. So if you can imagine Avraham having a discussion with Yitz'khaq, and he's telling his son, yeah, these steps are ancient. They've been here for 700 years or more, even at the time of Avraham. So, and I think, if I have my archaeology correct, it's probably the oldest artifacts that you can see original in Israel today. I don't understand why more people don't go there.
Dan.
Well, Tel Dan is old, yeah.
Yeah. Tel Dan.
That's some older.
That's one of the originals.
Only 85 Jews living in Hebron.
No, there's more than that.
It's original. It still stands.
Yes, original, still standing. That staircase is are the stairs that steps that Abraham would have walked on to get to the gates of the city where he made his real estate transaction. The first part of our prayer show, we didn't read that today, but we have in previous years. But they're still there today. So you have that in Hebron, some 4,500 years old. Then you also have the tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs in Hebron, which is the building that was built by Herod
The only original.
in the first century. And it's the only, I
Never
think
destroyed.
it's the only building that is in its entirety from the first century. There in Hebron. And Herod built in Jerusalem and he built in Hebron because of the historical importance of the tomb of the patriarchs. So he built the building that you see on top of the caves, which are like five stories below the ground. But, anyway, and if and when we get an opportunity to go again, we will certainly go there. I always enjoy going there. And I think some of you have met some of our friends that work there. And what's that? Yeah, Rabbi Simcha. Yeah. Anyway, it's a pretty amazing place. So that's the first recorded purchase of real estate in the land by Avraham. Very well documented in the previous chapters of our portion. We didn't actually read all of it today, but and secured by Avraham as a burial site, kind of like a forever place, right? Where you're going to bury your family. And tradition has it that Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, are buried there, which is why, and it's not in scripture anywhere, but Jewish traditions says that one of the reasons why Abraham selected that place is because of that connection back to the garden. However, he determined that, and you can read some of the traditional stories that he was there and he found these caves and he heard the voices of angels and he breathed air that was just enlivening and so forth. Anyway, there's a lot of traditional stories about why Abraham picked this place to bury Sarah, but that he wanted this connection back to the Garden of Eden. And so it's still there today. And so when you do go there, you're connected with not only the first century with the buildings that are built there by Herod, but you're also connected back to the time of Avraham. It just reminds me of that first verse in Matthew, right? Matthew 1, which begins with connecting the story of Yeshua, all of the Old Testament back to Avraham, right? And then through David, which we read today a bit of, right? Yeah.
Oh, is Rivkah in that same tomb?
Uh-huh.
But no,
Rachel is not. Rachel is the only one who's not.
Between Jerusalem and Hebron, right?
Yeah, and you can go to
grave is.
the tomb of Rachel also. We stopped by there, and okay, and then we picked up on the last part of the story of Rivkah, right? And the servant, Abraham's servant, who is not named in this portion, but it is assumed to be Eliezer because of all the contextual information, right? It's around that. And he is procuring the bride for Yitz'khaq, who we also know never left the land. Right? He was born, raised, lived his entire life in the land. Avraham made a point not to have Yitz'khaq leave the land, which is why he sent his servant to find a wife from his family's background there. And Avraham is taking care of the latter things of his life, right? Because of course it begins with the death of Sarah, and he's now working on procuring the wife for his son to accommodate the promises that God gave, right? And I love the picture of participation how everyday humans participate with God's plans. You don't just sit back and wait for His plans to work out, but you actually have a role in participating with Him. That's just kind of a remarkable thing. And I wanted to touch on that a little bit here today, because from a practical standpoint, I mean, we can look back at these stories of the patriarchs and matriarchs and the servants and all the people that are in these narratives and see what they did. But how do their stories apply to us today? And I think one of the ways is that we can learn by their example, certainly, and kind of maybe analyze what they did and maybe get into their minds a little bit to see what they were thinking, and see if there's something we can learn, from that to apply to our lives today. So we're gonna take a look at that. But before, and we'll kind of probably close with some of that practical application stuff today. So before we get there, let's kind of walk through the reading today. So chapter 24, verse 53. And everything I'm going to say probably is connected to that concept of how is it that we participate in God's plan? What's our role in partnering with HaShem, if you will, in not only living meaningful lives ourselves, but living the bigger picture of what He's doing in the world. So, chapter 24, verse 53. Vayotzei ha'eved, and the servant brought out kele kesef, jewels of silver. Kesef is the modern word in Hebrew for money. If you ask somebody for money, you're going to ask for a kesef. Silver, literally it's silver or coins, or so it is.
They didn't have paper currency in those days.
No, they didn't. They didn't use paper back then. They used something of substance, right? Gold, silver. So the servant brought out vayotzei ha'eved kele kesef u'kele zahav. So jewelry. It's translated as jewelry, silver jewelry, and gold jewelry. Uve gadim, and garments. So gold, silver, jewelry, and garments. Vayiten le Rivkah, and he gave them to Rivkah. Migdanot, and precious things. Migdanot is like valuable, precious things. Migdanot Natan he gave le Achia to her brother, uleima and to her mother. So what we see here is this ancient practice, which is well attested even outside of Scripture in other cultures, even around in the land in that time. The ancient practice of giving gifts for the bride and her family. We see this we'll see this not back, but in future stories. Genesis, a couple of verses I gave you there. Genesis 34:12. I remember where in Shechem. He wants to marry Dinah, right? And it says in there that he's ready to give the gifts for the bride and the family. He's ready to do that. So you see that tradition even in the city of Shechem, right? Those people there, outside of Jewish or any other tradition, but just culturally how that was a part of that thing. And the idea is that, remember we talked about how family is all about life, right? How are you going to survive? How are you going to provide food and so forth and sustenance for your family? Well, you got to have a lot of help to do that. That's why
establishing your family life.
Having big families is the way to do that, right? And of course, that's also going to secure your ultimate future, so and so forth. So so we also see there in that tradition, when someone takes a bride from someone else, that bride gives up her inheritance where she comes from and takes on the inheritance of where she is married to, right? And so we see all these kind of traditional things, not only in the story of Avraham, but in the culture in general. And a lot of these things are, like I said, practical things for living. When people married, they generally married because it was going to be advantageous to their life, right? It's going to bring some kind of value to them, and therefore they need to exchange something of value in order to take that from somebody else, right? You're not going to give your daughters to go, to go somewhere else and help them without something, because you're losing a body, you're losing somebody who's going to, potentially have children. If they marry within your family, they're going to have children, and there's a lot of value you're giving up. So the tradition is you give something in exchange for that, right? So that's why you see this concept of him giving silver and gold and garments to Rivkah, not only to the bride herself, because you want to secure her choice of joining, right? But also to her family, her brother and her mother in this case. Not sure why her father isn't mentioned there. I guess maybe he's not in the picture anymore. That's why she's being raised by her brother and her mother, right? So he's going to give, the servant is going to give these gifts to her family, basically to say, we're going to take this resource from you, we're going to give you a resource so that you can, replace that or have something in place of that. Very practical thing. And it talks about, and it also explains kind of the concept of inheritance, right? Because now she is an inheritor with the groom that she's marrying, right? And that's how the kingdoms kind of interacted with each other. You're seeing like international trade kind of going on here, right? How are we going to align with one another and establish relationships so that we can trade with each other, we can benefit everybody? Life's pretty rough, and we need help from all around, right, to survive and to grow and so forth. So that's kind of what we're seeing there in these first verses.
Is it accurate to say diplomacy is involved?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
And you actually see that in this too, because where is Rivkah's voice in all this, in this whole discussion? It's nowhere, right? She's just out. She's out doing water, bringing water and doing servant stuff. And then this guy comes and she works with, she waters his camels and presses him, and then he starts giving her gifts, and then gives gifts to her family. But her choice nothing is said about her whole role in this, right? Other than being the vehicle of what's trying to be procured until the end.
Yes.
Right? And it's kind of a surprising, kind of a shocking little moment where it's like all this wheeling and dealing is going on between the servant and the mother and the brothers and the family and all that, and they're saying, making all these deals. But then they seal the deal, right, so to speak. All these gifts and so forth are being given, and then they finally, at the end, they say, well, is she going to go with him or not? It's like this. Now we find out what her choice is in the matter.
She's got some say.
But the fact is that she does have ultimate say. But a part of raising children in that day is that you live for your family. And if they're doing all this, it's like they're doing this for you. I mean, you still have the choice, but you better choose well, to support your family.
As we're all looking at you.
Yeah. But she does actually have the choice of whether she's going to go or not. Wayne. And then Steve.
You have to put this timing on that. It's like it would be already assumed that they agreed to this whole thing because of the gift giving. And it's not until the request is made for them to leave right away, because it says the plural form of days is the word for year, and then it says possibly 10, which means 10 months. So 10 months is the normal preparation time for a bride to be married. So once they ask for 10 months time more for her to get ready to be married, that's when they say, will you go with her, with him? It's not a matter of will you marry him, it's a matter of timing. We go with him now rather than waiting 10 months to be prepared to be a bride. And then she says, yes, I will go with him.
Yeah, and that's an aspect of the choice that she's making. And a part of, maybe one way you can look at this is is they're saying, well, we need to plan this wedding, it's like you would plan a wedding today, right? It takes time, it takes resources, you're gonna plan this big party, you're gonna invite people, you're gonna do all this stuff from the traditional
Yeah,
standpoint.
but they didn't hire a caterer in those days.
Well, sure they did, probably, I don't know. But they had that within their family, I'm sure. But yeah, and a part of that is we're gonna forego that, all the traditional ceremonies and all that, so that she can go now, and is she willing to give that up? That's a big deal, to give up your wedding, so to speak, and elope, basically. You're gonna just go right now with them, and so that's an aspect of the question also. Is like the decision's already been made, so to speak, now the question is, she gets a say in whether there's the big party or not, and if she's willing to go with him now, but she says, yeah, she's saying, I'm out of here. So, yeah, Steve.
Are we talking about Muhar? Muhar? Is that, the type of salvation, body of Christ type stuff? Receiving the gift of the Holy Spirit, almost like a promise ring.
Well, the bridal paradigm certainly is, yeah, the whole, the reason why that's,
The
that,
bridal paradigm.
yeah.
I'm sitting in that right now, just
Paradise.
blown away by it all.
Definitely.
You see a picture of what we all
It's
go
time.
through.
yes,
He gave his blood. Instead of gold and silver, corruptible things like Paul said, he gave his blood.
and the incorruptible gift.
Yeah, so we receive that. Yeah, I've seen it like that.
Yeah,
Maybe I'm.
absolutely,
No,
no,
that's-
that's why the
I think
the bridal paradigm is used in
Yeah.
that.
I'm not a guy, it's hard to think like that, but I get it.
Yeah, and it's because the culture would understand all that.
Yeah.
They would go, oh, we get that, yeah, definitely. So they're gonna forego the party, and they ask Rivkah, and she says she'll go, right? Okay, so, one last thing about this concept of kelei kesef, jewelry of silver and jewels of gold, right? That's mentioned here. That word kelei, jewel, it's often translated as jewels, is also the word that's used for, say, a carpenter's tool bag. Your tools, your equipment, it's used for, practical things like that, equipment. And why is that? And I love this about the Hebrew language. It's because, what are your tools? They're things that help you get the job done, right? They help you accomplish something. So what this is inferring by the use of the word for jewelry is jewelry has a purpose, right? What job does it get done?
Beautifies.
It beautifies, but like in this case, what job does it get done?
Transaction, thing of
It
value.
procures the bride. Yeah, it's a transactional thing. It has value. It's an understood value that can be exchanged for something else. So it's like this jewelry is being used to accomplish this wedding, this marriage, right? And that's why it's used. The use of it is emphasized here, right? The servant brought out the equipment, the tools that are necessary to complete this transaction, so to speak. I know it gets less romantic, right? But why is it that your eyes pop when you see, the Hope Diamond or something? Well, yes, because it's beautiful, but it's beautiful because it has a value, and it's so valuable that it's like everybody understands that value and can trade it for something else, right? As opposed to something else that may be valuable to you, but not so valuable to somebody else, right? So that's the idea of that concept of jewels, is they are the utensils. It's also used for utensils, like utensils in the temple. And what are utensils? They're things that get the job done, right? So, and you got to have them, and So anyway, that's the imagery that's being used here with this. It's not just sparkly, shiny things that are attractive, but no, it's things that get the job done. And the servant is using these things that his master has given him. Right? See that analogy? We use the thing that God gives us to accomplish the job and tasks that He's called us to do, and we barter and trade with those things. And what are the things that are most valuable to you? Integrity, honesty. Think about the things in other people that you can literally trade with right? So anyway, so that imagery is in this whole concept too of the servant. And, you know, when you're talking about the marriage paradigm and all those kind of things. Okay.
Whoa,
So
it's not like the gifts of the Holy Spirit. It's almost like that's how the Lord is paid for his bride. He blesses his bride.
and and what are those gifts? They are things that get the job done in you, right? Things that you use to get the job done, right?
I
So
think that's where it came from.
Mhm.
Paul got it. I never knew.
I'm sure it is, yeah. Okay, and then a little emotional little scene comes in here where the family blesses Rivkah, right? And she's going to leave now. Their time is short, and she's going to leave, and they bless Rivkah. They yavachu et Rivkah, and they blessed Rivkah. Vayomru la, and said to her. And this is really specific language, because you can say someone said to somebody without all of these words. So Vayomru is and they said to her la, to her, right? So it's like it's emphasizing this relational aspect of this moment. This is a extremely emotional moment. They blessed Rivkah and they said to her, Achotenu, our sister. This word for our sister is also charged with emotion. It's almost like they're saying, you are our sister. It's kind of like they're saying, you are our sister, you always have been, you always will be, right? It's got that kind of emotion, I think, in that word, achotenu. They're saying, you are our sister. And then they go on with this blessing, right? And they said to her, the alfei revava, may you become thousands. Alfei is, elef is thousands, right? May you become thousands. Re'ava is the word for large, big, great, right? The words don't really flow as a sentence. They're just big ideas, right? May you become thousands, myriads. You know, that's the emotion of this moment is being expressed here. Right? They're saying, you are our sister. You always have been. We're a part of you, even into the future. And may you grow as part of us, as part of what's happening here, into thousands and myriads, tens of thousands, or something like that, right? That's the essence of that emotional statement. And then they say, and may your seed possess the gate of those hating you. They yirash zarech, and may your seed become et sha'ar, or become or possess, to procure, right? Sha'ar, the gate, son'av. It's hard to translate it like directly because these words are like packed with directional movement and all these kinds of things. But the gate, we know the gates are the gates of the city, right? It's where business is transacted. It's where the ownership of everything resides. It's where the authority and leadership resides. So it's saying, may your seeds possess that, right? Possess the authority, all the transactions that occur in the city, right? May your seed possess the gates of those hating you. So it means that they can hate you, but you control everything. You're the authority, and you control all the transactions that are going on. And if they hate you, you're still in control of that, right? That's the idea that's being expressed here. Now the concept of hating you, generally it's just the hating ones, people that hate you, that hate what you do, that hate your land, the land, everything. They're just the people that are filled with hate. May you control the gate of those. Right? It's like you can't control them, you can't make them stop hating you, but you can control the functionality of what they do and how they do it and all that. We're in control. So that's the essence of this. Yeah.
It's interesting that the content of the blessing that her family gives her is the same content as the blessing that God gave Abraham.
Yep.
In chapter 22.
22:17. And when you look at that blessing, so after that's after the Akedah, after the binding of Isaac, right? So Abraham's proven himself there, and then God reiterates that blessing again right after that, right? He says, I'm going to bless you and so forth. But interestingly, in that blessing is the first time that included in the blessing is protection. Before it's always you'll have lots of children, you'll have land, you'll have, right? But then after Avraham gives up Isaac, right, so to speak, and receives him back, then the promise now is that you will be blessed, you'll have land, you'll have many seeds, but I'm going to protect you, care for you.
What verse is that?
22:17. Right? And
I don't see protection, but you're seeing.
what does it say? What is it?
22:17 says, I will certainly bless you, and I will most certainly increase your descendants to as many as there are stars in the sky of grains and sand on the seashore. Your descendants will possess the cities of their enemies.
There it is.
Is that it?
Yeah.
That's it?
Yeah, when you possess the cities of your enemies,
And that's what
you're
you were talking
victorious.
about previously. Okay.
Yeah, and that's the same statement that's made here, right?
Okay.
That Rivkah's families are getting the same blessing that God gave Avraham about possessing the gates of those.
Huh.
And this is the first time that aspect of their activity is that God's authority or essence of that activity is expressed there and then here also, right? And it also marks, I think, what I call a historic and providential event, right? There's a major thing that's happening here with Rivkah. Because she's going to be the one through whom progeny is going to come, right? She's going to be the one who's raising the children and, doing all the partnership stuff with Yitz'khaq. Basically, as the one who's going to follow who? Who is she following in her role in leadership? Sarah, yeah, right? And we'll see that in a little bit later. But there's this divine, historic, providential event with Rivkah going with the servant, right? Because it fulfills the promise of progeny, and then security, which her family is praying over her, right? That you're going to possess the gates of your enemies, and right, you're going to be victorious over your enemies. And then her family gives her nurse and her maids, right? And again, what we're seeing here is this transactional element of what's happening here. All these people are thinking bigger things than just themselves in the moment, right? They're thinking about the future. Why do they give her a nurse? She's going to have lots of kids, right? They just said she's going to become thousands and tens of thousands. She's going to need some help, right? So they give her this nurse, and it says, and when they leave with maids. So she has this entourage of people that are going to help her, and her family is providing that. And again, in exchange for what? Jewels and clothing and very special things that are, it's an exchange. This isn't just a gifting one way. This is a transactional thing. Yeah.
There must have been a lot of jewels and a lot of money. They sent her with a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, and think of the servant traveling with what was like 10 camels and 10 of Avraham.
Yeah, I know.
And which also means that they also had protection because, you're not going to just go wandering around the countryside with all those valuables. I mean, Avraham was known to be a very sharp, security-minded person. He knew how to protect his stuff. That's probably why he became who he was, because, and you remember back when the battle with the 5 kings, right? He got some of his own men and they went out and they battled 5 different kingdoms.
He had 300 men.
Yeah, and he had 300. I mean, you don't talk about the Secret Service or some detail. No, he didn't have a little detail. He had an army. And he was probably a military type genius, and he knew how to protect his stuff. I mean, when you're out there and you're a nomadic kind of a nation, you got to have protection. You got to be able to protect Otherwise, people are just you're just a big target wandering around, right?
Well, this has to be asked. Did Abraham's servant go outside the promised land?
Yes.
Yeah, he did.
Where did he go? Syria? Where?
Yeah, he went back to where Avraham came from.
Oh, Ur?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, not
Oh,
her.
no, he went to
The other one.
Haran.
Haran. Yeah.
Where the father had stopped.
Yeah. Which is no short distance, by the way. So,
No.
yeah.
It's still a long run.
And to cart all those jewels and gold and valuables and yeah.
Just look at it, a wet nurse accompanying her is a sign of her social standing also in the culture of that day. If your wet nurse accompanies you after you're engaged and go to be married, that means you're of a higher social standing. That doesn't happen on the general basis across population.
Well, the whole thing with her entourage being given to her indicates that her family's social status was pretty high, back then. It's also very interesting that the name Devorah isn't given right here, right? You just know that her nurse goes with her, right? Gets given to her and goes with her. And you hear her name when?
35
When she dies, right? It says she dies and Rivkah's nurse is buried. So her death and burial are noted in Scripture. That's a pretty significant thing. Not only for a woman, but for anybody's death to be noted in Scripture. I mean, she was an important person. That just emphasizes the importance of progeny and the service that's provided, and all those things are just so important they cannot be overlooked how valuable they are. And I think that's a problem in our society today. Motherhood and the raising of children is kind of, it's delegated to other people, it's whatever, and this is emphasizing the fact that Avraham was chosen. Why? Because he's going to teach his children, right? And this is all part of that. He's providing for his son, a wife, and now there's this nurse who becomes significant probably in the lives of all those children. That's why she's noted as when she passes away, that big loss right here when she passes away, right? She's noted there. And so her social status is highly noted. Also, in this prayer, when it goes back to the prayer that Avraham was given, right? It talks about back then. It introduces also another idea in the prayer after the Akedah of God saying, you can have land, you can have lots of children. I'm going to get, you're going to have victory over the gates of your enemy. And it also says, not only are you going to be like the stars in the sky, which we've heard before, but it says you're going to be like the sand on the seashore, right? And I'll take 5 seconds to do this because this one, I have this book it's called Grains of Sand, and this guy took pictures of sand collected from all kinds of different places around the world. What he found was, this is a picture of sand from what you would see as a white beach, white sand. This is a picture when you magnify the sand, what you see.
No way.
Yep.
It looks like candy.
If you were going to grab a handful of sand at the beach and look at it under the microscope, I forget where this picture is from, but this book called Grains of Sand is pictures of all kinds of sand from all kinds of different places. And the amazing thing about sand on the seashore is what? What do you see here? They're all different.
Yeah, they're not uniform.
They're not great.
You want to talk about, this whole DEI stuff that we talk about today, and diversity, equity, inclusion. What God is saying here is that His plan for all of mankind, like sand on the seashore, which all looks white, is really the culmination of all these unique individuals whose lives He's going to invest in. And so when He says your children are going to be like the sand on the seashore, He's not saying they're going to be all the same. They're just going to be white and bland, and everybody's going to be the same, pile of whatever. No, He's saying, man, when you dive down and look at this, the uniqueness of the sand. That's why I love that book. And if you ever come over to my house, you can look through the book. It's one. And he just said, and you can find it online too. It's called Grains of Sand, I think. And all he did was he just grabbed sand from different places he went and looked at it, happened to look at it under the microscope, and then he started to compare them, and you see all kinds of different things that they're made up of. Black sand, the white sand, the yellow sands, a certain, and it's very much like this. It's just a crazy,
I wonder what the sand of Hawaii
crazy
is
thing.
like.
Yeah, it's
Hawaii
remarkable.
is so
Judy, the question is, what color is sand? I love it.
It's Hawaii.
Yeah, sand is like light, right? Light, it's the refraction properties of light is that it's the combination of all the colors, right? And it comes out as white. But when you break up the spectrum, what do you see? An infinite number of colors. Anyway, yeah. So that was introduced with Abraham's blessing at the Akedah and kind of echoed here because this prayer points back to that prayer also. So yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Let's see. And then what am I looking at here? What verse? Oh, 24:62. I'll say, okay, so the entourage departs and they head home. And then meanwhile, back at the ranch, I love how, I'll get that in a second. The Torah is so spacious in its narrative. It's not just, like a series of events, like a documentary kind of thing. But there's this story going on. And when you hear this, meanwhile, Yitz'khaq, one evening after coming along the road from Be'er L'chai Ro'i, I was going to have you say that with me 10 times, but hold on. Be'er L'chai Ro'i. Where is that?
Oh.
What do you know about Be'er L'chai Ro'i?
That's where Hagar went.
Yes.
That's where
Yes.
the well that
Yes.
God met Hagar, and she named the well the God who sees, right? That's what that's all about. And so he's coming from there. What does that mean? He's just out wandering around and happened to be coming by this place? No.
Didn't Yeshua go there and have that talk with the woman?
Well, that well is
place?
not,
That's not.
and that's not this well because that's in Samaria.
That's north.
That's a different well. Still a well nonetheless. But this wants you to think about Hagar and Ishmael, right? So he's coming back from the well where Hagar and Ishmael was saying his life was. What is that saying? That he's coming back from hanging out with Ishmael, right? Yeah, he wants to live there, right? After the Akedah, the thought is that he went to live with his brother. It's like, Dad, I'm not going to give you the opportunity to do that again, because I don't know what's going to happen the next time you try to sacrifice me. No. So he goes and he lives with Ishmael. I mean, when you look at all of the clues, and again, this is not conclusive, it's just hints, but that's the way the Torah tells stories, right? It's thinking. All of the things about Yitz'khaq and Ishmael are fellowship. They dwell together. They bury their father together. We'll see that later on, right? Why? Because they're hanging out. Because they're family. They're connected. They know in some way that they're going to be the leaders of their kingdoms, and they're doing this thing of making sure that we're all aligned together here because we need each other in this world, right? Just like Rivkah's family saying we're all gonna try to work together in this. So that's why it says that he's coming from Be'er L'chai Ro'i. He was living in the Negev, which is out in the wilderness, and he went out walking in the field. And all these very laconic words, right? They're just like brief little, but they all have deep meaning. And that's how the Torah, when you see something like that, they're just not, happenstance.
Yeah.
They really are invested with meaning, which I just love that. So he's living in the Negev. He came from the Ishmael's in view here, Hagar, Ishmael's in view here, living life with his brother, and his stepbrother. Is that stepbrother? Yeah, half-brother. Half-brother. And it says now he's out walking in the field. Now these are words that are charged with Garden of Eden imagery, right? He's walking in the field. What did God task man with?
To cultivate.
Cultivate. See, there's all this imagery of Yitz'khaq's thinking about cultivating the future, right? And now his bride is coming to. You see that imagery? He's out there communing with nature because this is the future, right? He's breathing the air. He's touching the stalks that are growing or whatever. He's out in the field, he's meditating, he's praying. And Jewish tradition has it that this is where evening prayer comes from, right? There's a patriarch over each time of prayer. And Yitz'khaq was the guy who's over evening prayer. Because in the evening, he's out there in his field, communing with God, meditating, thinking about big picture things, the future, right? That's what this imagery, he's out walking in the field. He's strolling, the word walking or strolling, in the field.
I'm sorry, I have a question.
Yeah.
When you said Esau is cultivating the future,
No, Yitz'khaq. Yeah, Yitz'khaq.
Where is that here? Or is it like in a word or a Bible verse?
In 24:16, it says he's walking in the field. He's out walking in the field. He's living in the Negev and out walking in the field.
24:62?
24:62, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And 63. 63 is where he's walking in the field.
Okay, cool. Thank
So he's
you.
walking in the field and he looks up and he sees camels approaching,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Oh, okay, I did research that. That's strong.
Yeah, so there's all the imagery there is, it's just beautiful. It's just a rich narrative story. So he's walking in the field. While he's walking in the field, while he's out in the field thinking about the future and how things grow and how things, all those meditative thoughts, and he's talking with God about all this, and he sees camels approaching. What does that mean?
His love is coming.
Right, that's the imagery that's, this is beautiful scenery and you got to remember, because the servant's been gone a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't just, a trip down to LA and back. 4-hour drive, we'll be back for dinner, right? No, he's been gone a long time. And for this moment to happen just like that, the Torah is not saying this is just happenstance moment. This is saying God's plan is being revealed here, folks. That's kind of what the imagery is, right? He just happened to be out looking in the field, thinking about all this, and now he sees camels approaching, and he knows this is the servant returning, right? And then the beauty of the narrative, and I'm not much of a romantic, but this is like the most romantic scene ever composed. I mean, this is like cinema, big screen stuff here, right? And at the same time he's doing that, Rivkah is expectantly looking because she knows they're getting, she has to know they're getting close to, the destination. And she goes, who's that? Who's that knocking the field? And the servant says, that's my master. And it says, a lot's made about this, but it says she dismounts her camel rapidly. And literally it says she fell from her camel. The idea is, when you fall from something, it doesn't mean, she was clumsy and just dumped herself on the ground. It means to dismount, but the idea is that she did this quickly. As soon as she saw and knew who that was, right, she says, I need to be off of this animal. I need to prepare. She needs to do something, right? So, and the sages say, she when she saw him, he was so beautiful, she just fell off her camel. Right? There's all that kind of talk. But so however she does it, she gets down. Very emphatically, she gets down, and she says to the servant, "Who is this?" And by the way, she does that before she asks who it is, right? Because she's like, it's just an anticipation of this moment. What's going to be like when she meets her husband to be, right? So she gets off the camel. She asks him who is it, and he says, "Yep, it's who you think it is." And it's fascinating that you think about the romance of this moment is that Yitz'khaq is lifting his eyes, Rivkah is looking out from the camel, and I suspect their eyes met, right?
Distance, right?
And from a distance, they knew that each other was looking at each other, and that each other knew who they were. There's no question here, right? And the propitiousness of it, the crafted part of this is that they both knew at the same moment they laid eyes on each other who each other was, right? You can call it love at first sight, you can call it destiny. I call it the timing of God and the purposes of God just intersected just in that moment. when their eyes met.
Yeah.
It's like they both knew that this is a huge moment, right? And it's just so beautiful the way the Torah portrays this, right? And then so what does she do? She veils herself. And there's a lot of talk about the traditions of veiling and so forth. There's some talk that says that the Hebrew women didn't veil themselves, right? You see that when Avraham and Sarah first come into the land, right? And the Pharaoh sees her. She's beautiful. Why is she beautiful? She's not veiled. He can just see her, right? So there's this concept that the Hebrew women didn't veil themselves, and only when they were betrothed and promised to someone did they veil themselves, which possibly is why she's saying, oh, I'm betrothed to this man. I want to make sure he knows that I am for him. I'm his, right? All the transactions have occurred, and I am, it's like we're married already. When my son asked his wife to marry him, they became betrothed. That was in essence the moment of the commitment that was made. The rest of it, the wedding, all this rest of the stuff was post that. But when they commit to being betrothed is the moment of connection. Yeah.
The commentaries that I read said that during that day, ordinary women didn't wear veils on their faces. The only time you wore a veil was when you were engaged to be married. That's the only time you wore a veil.
Yeah.
So when she saw him, she put a veil on because she's engaged to marry this guy.
Yeah. Oh man, that's really difficult. Okay, so hugely romantic moment. This is this is epic. Hollywood should do something like this. I don't think they have the ability to, but anyway. Then the servant replies and tells him who it is. She veils herself, right? Because she wants to make sure that he knows who she is, I guess. I don't know. They already know. It's like this is all just basically honoring the traditions and whatnot. The verse 66 is really important. It's so small, and I think it gets overlooked a lot. It says, the servant told Yitz'khaq everything he had done. Now, if you remember the narrative before, do you remember everything the servant did? You better, because he said it 3 times, right? You saw it as it's happening. You saw it as he told somebody else. You saw it repeated again. Everything that he had done was so well documented before. And what this statement here is saying is, hey, readers, pause a moment and go back and look at everything this guy did. From the time he was assigned the task, right? How he vowed to his master what he was going to do. And so, when this verse says this is not, oh yeah, I came back from a trip. Yeah, here's some slides. Here's some pictures. This is what we did. No, this is, and you know how this servant works, right? When he explains something, he talks about falling down on his face before God and praying. This guy detailed everything that he did. Yeah. This was no short thing. So Yitz'khaq is getting the whole story, and probably his jaws hitting the ground when the servant says, I asked God, if I go to this well, somebody says, I'll give you some water and I'll water your camels too, and then she does it, and he's just, so he's explaining all this stuff about who Rivkah is, right, and all the signs and everything. So if you don't think that's getting him excited about this person he's about to marry, I mean, he's seeing the quality of this person. He's seeing the contrast of her family that is a little bit shady. He's seeing all these things that the servant is explaining to him. How when it was time to go, she forwent all the partying, which I would suspect that a lot of people, they live for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I want to be honored. I'm getting married. I'm going to soak up every last, cake and flower and everything, celebration.
Saying goodbye to everybody.
Yeah. And he's seeing all this value of who this person is. That's why that verse is so important. When it says he explained everything that happened, right? And why is that so important? Because as he's explaining everything that happened, and he's getting an idea. The very next verse says, the servant, then Yitz'khaq brought her into his mother's tent. Right? It's probably the most romantic verse in all of the scriptures.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like an ultimate expression of love. And it is actually the second time the word ahava, love, is mentioned in the Torah. I talked about this last week, I think, right? The first time it's mentioned between a father and a son, right? Between Avraham and Yitz'khaq. Remember, take your son, your only son, the one you love, Yitz'khaq, right? That's the first mention of love. Second mention of love is here, where it says, he brought her into his mother's tent, took Rivkah, she became his wife, and he loved her. That's just,
Awesome.
I don't know, if that doesn't get the romance in your emotions going, you're missing the story, because it is just an incredible moment. And then it also says, thus was Yitz'khaq comforted for the loss of his mother, right? Again, the emphasis on the importance of Sarah, and now Rivkah, who is going to replace her. Comfort, remember we talked about the term comfort, right? It's the same word as regret that gets translated, right? We talked all about how Noah's name Naham is comfort, right? Comfort is adjusting to the way that the world is, right? It's adjusting to the new circumstances, right? Why do you comfort someone who's lost a loved one? Well, because that's what they have to do. They have to adjust to the world without that person. And that's what comfort is, right? So he is now finally able to adjust to the world without his mother. And it's been years probably, I think. I don't remember all the details. It's been like 3 years or something like that since Sarah passed away. And now finally he is able to be comforted. He's able to adjust now to the world without his mother, because Rivkah is now in his life. Right? It's just a beautiful thing. And then Avraham takes another wife. Now, before I get to what I want to leave you with today, when you read this next chapter, it says Avraham took another wife whose name was Keturah. Let me ask you a question. When was that?
Yeah, right.
When was that? Most people say, well, it's after the servant went away and brought back Rivkah, and Isaac, and now his progeny is set. Now he's free to go take.
I wonder.
No, doesn't say when. And when you look at the chronology of things, there are hints that this happened alongside of the time of Hagar. Right? Remember when Sarah gave Hagar to Avraham, says, you're going to have kids, right? And one of the big hints is in this narrative, verse 5, it says, Avraham gave everything he owned to Yitz'khaq, right? This is a big plan thing. This isn't a chronological. This is the statement of intent of everything, right? Avraham gave everything he owned to Yitz'khaq, but to the sons of the concubines, plural. So Hagar and Keturah could have coincided in some part of the time. Because it doesn't say when this happened. This isn't like
after Sarah.
this could be happening all along also, but it's a side story, right? Keturah and her kids. And one of the reasons why is because it says previously it says Avraham was really old. How can he have kids when he's so old? Unless there's another miracle or whatever. So this could be happening parallel with. Okay, I just wanted to leave that in your mind, just just so you understand how the Torah functions. It's not a chronology, step by step thing, right? So, and because of that word concubines, it's saying that there were concubines. Keturah was another concubine, like Hagar was. And the reason why I think that's so important is because you see the same thing happening with Keturah and her children as happened with Hagar and hers, right? Remember, he sent Hagar away, right? He divorced her in essence. He took her out of the inheritance procedure, which is exactly what he's doing here for Keturah and her kids. Providing for them, right? He's setting them up. He's giving them their $1 million to go make their estate, whatever. He's setting them up and taking care of them, but he's saying that they are not a part of this inheritance. Because now the Torah narrative is going to narrow even more, right? From the universal, God created the heavens and the earth, down to the Avraham, the one family, down to his children, right? This focusing of particularity that's occurring is where the Torah is, setting all that up, and so that's what's happening. That's what's happening here. Yeah.
A couple of the commentaries that I read said that Hagar is Keturah, that that's another name for Hagar.
Interesting.
That
Yeah.
brought her back into the family after
Yeah.
Sarah died.
But see, you have to get in the mind of the commentators, because they're not thinking like we think logically with 1 + 1 is 2, right? They're thinking conceptually. They're thinking that when they say Keturah is Hagar, they're saying Keturah is like Hagar. She's a concubine like him. All the things that happen are parallel to Hagar, right? So some of them will say, they'll say that Hagar, Keturah is Hagar, and that he brought her back into his life or whatever. But I'm not sure how that actually plays out. I lean more towards the concept that when they say that she is, it's like she is like. That's the way I would read that. But you're welcome to believe.
The reason was because of the amount of children that she had afterwards, and the way that developed a whole another
Yeah.
group of people.
Well, and the idea here is that God fulfills his promises. He fulfills the promises to Ishmael, right? Who we see here becomes 12 tribes, right? He's chieftain of 12 tribes, right? And Avraham becomes the father of nations, Keturah, because you see Midian, you see all these people that become other nations in the future, right? So there's this fulfillment of God's promises. That's what this narrative here is all about in regards to all of those children's nations. God's fulfilling those promises to not only to Avraham, to Yitz'khaq, to Ishmael, but to all of the nations. And it's not saying that all of those nations are any less important. It's just that the narrative is now going to focus more on one. It's kind of like the way I view that is, when you're growing up in the dating world, there's all these other potential spouses around, right? There's a world of potential people that you could have a relationship with. And your job is to kind of narrow it down and then finally pick one, and you focus on that one, and that's the one that, it's not to say that other people aren't valuable or important, right? But it's saying for your life and for what you're doing, you have to focus on one thing to the exclusion of others, right? For the purpose of that future, right? That's what the Torah is in essence doing here. And it's saying that all the other ones are going to have their own relationships or their own things and fulfill wonderful things, right? But for the concept of the Torah, it's going to focus on this one example.
Wouldn't they need that though for the fulfillment of the prophecy of Yeshua, right? You would need to narrow that down.
Exactly, yeah.
To have things.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Prophecy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, how is he going to be a descendant of Avraham?
Right.
All the things that lay out unless there is that specificity for Messiah. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so one last thing. I think I can share this in a quick moment.
Okay.
One of the things that hits me from a practical standpoint is, how do all these people, Abraham, Isaac, Rebekah, the servant, how do they all make decisions on what they're going to do or not do in their life? Let's bring it into a practical world. You're at work at your job, right? And you're just trying to figure out, how do I get ahead? How do I progress in my life, right? And what I want to suggest is that what I see, even with Avraham, and his example, is that he's an adventurer. And I think the guy just loves adventure. He doesn't like the boring life. And what I see, the example of all of these people, and this is not theology, this is just a kind of an application kind of a thing, okay, if you will. What all of these people do when I look at like my own life, I'm thinking about how do I bring this into my life? What all of these people do is, in particular with the example of Rivkah, at some point in their life, they go the extra mile. They go the extra mile. Right? Remember Rivkah? What was her thing? Will you give me some water? She goes, yes. And then she goes the extra mile, and I'll water your camels too. Well, when I think about that in my life, I get kind of practical. It's like, yeah, I'll go the extra mile for you, but what am I going to get out of this? You know, you're at work, right? And your boss has some expectation, and you think, I'm going to go the extra mile. I'm going to make an impression. I'm going to get ahead, right? And you go the extra mile, and nothing. Crickets. Wow, I really put myself out there, and I get so you see what I'm saying? How do you know when to go the extra mile and when not to? And you know,
You don't. You just go the extra
what?
mile.
So let me talk to you about some practical things there. When you go the extra mile, why are you doing it? Why are you going the extra mile?
Because it's part of your character.
For the raise, because you're going to want to get a raise.
No.
For the money, for the title, right? You're going to get the title of vice president, right? For validation,
No.
you know, pat on the back. For power, because you're going to get to, you know, now you get to be the manager of these other people. Is that why you went the extra mile?
No.
Influence?
No.
Maybe you're going the extra mile because you just want to learn and grow in an area where you haven't been before.
It builds your character.
Yeah, that's character building. Yeah. Well,
It's who you are.
okay, so you guys are way ahead of me on that, right? Right? You don't do it necessarily for any of those things. So then let me ask you another question. What do you do when you go the extra mile and things don't go your way? As a matter of fact, they get worse.
It doesn't change the thing.
Well, I want to suggest that you have three options. Again, I'm trying to think practically here. You have three options when things don't go well. You can pull back. I'm not going to stick my neck out again like that. I'm not going to. Why would I go the extra mile, right? You can pull back. You can push back. You can say, look what I did. Come on now. You have to say that's worth something, right? You can push back. So you pull back, you can push back, or you can just say, you know what? This whole thing is not worth it. I'm out of here. And just leave.
Yeah.
Pull back, push back, leave. You know, what I'm saying is you have options. And when I look at all of these people's lives, I think, what are they thinking of as their options? I mean, the servant had options, right? If Rivkah doesn't go with him, he's released from his task, right? He has an out, and right, but he's still pressing, you know, for all this to happen. And so the end result of all this, and you guys all get this, but it's a little concrete for me as I'm thinking about this, is that when things don't go well, and you're trying to decide whether to pull back, push back, leave in this circumstance, what's happening here? I suggest that what you do is you look at your values. Why are you doing what you're doing? Is it for the money? Is it for the title? Is it, you know, and you might begin to say, oh, yeah, you know, part of me kind of wanted to stick to that other guy and I get the promotion, he doesn't. I don't know. All I'm saying is that when you honestly evaluate your own values, right, that's how you're going to decide when to press ahead, when to back off, when to bail, right? By looking at your circumstances and assessing what is important to you. That's the concept of the jewels, right? The jewels got the job done. Why? Because they were valuable. They had inherent value that everyone else could see, that was in their own essence, their uniqueness, their rarity, whatever it is. It's about your values. And so, from a practical standpoint, here it is. If you want to live a righteous life, go the extra mile, right? But assess your values as you do that, as to why you're doing that, right? I mean, one of the reasons why I study Torah when I assess my values is not to become a great teacher, not to have great wisdom or know something somebody else. No, it's because it has a value in itself, right? It's a jewel. It can get things done, and I want to procure Torah for its own value.
Its own
Right?
sake.
That's why I love that prayer.
For
We're going to
its
study
sake.
Torah for its own sake, because it is inherently valuable, and that's what I want to base my decisions on. When do I go the extra mile? How far do I go? What do I do with this and that? Or right? By assessing those values, considering that when I'm making decisions, thinking. And I see that in all these people's lives, right? They are assessing their values. That's what's happening with Rivkah. She's marrying Isaac, right? She's making the decision, do I go later? Do I go now? What is the most valuable aspect of all of this to accomplish the bigger picture? Right? So I love the story. Yeah.
I just wanted to interject. I think a lot of times you go the extra mile because you were raised that way. You were raised that way, you were modeled that way, and they had models before them too.
Yes.
And they saw it.
And
It wasn't-
well, and you can see the benefits that other people got from it before too. So yeah, you value the experience of those who teach you, who have the integrity, and yeah, that's good. I like it.
With their value.
Well, let's stand together, and I'll let you get on to value the things in your life as you make decisions. And yeah, go that extra mile. Water those camels. I know sometimes it seems like a lot of work. I think it's kind of dirty and messy, but there's just such inherent value, and particularly, like I said, saying Torah for its own sake, and I just love doing that, with all of you. So, well, let's recite this Aleinu together, and then we'll be on our way for today. It is our duty to praise the Master of all, to ascribe greatness to the one who created from the beginning, that he called us from the nations of the earth, and chose us as his family, a treasured people, and placed our portion in Yeshua. We are your people whom he redeemed. We therefore bow and worship and give thanks for the King of Kings, the Holy One. Blessed is He, who extends the heavens and establishes the earth, whose throne of glory is in the heavens above, and whose power's presence is in the heights of heights. He is our God. There is no other. Truly, He is our King. There is none else. As it is written in His Torah, you shall know and take to heart this day that Adonai is God, in heaven above and on earth below. There is no other. And Father, we thank you for your love for us, for the beauty of how you teach us through your word, and the examples that you have given us. And I pray that you would strengthen us all to just extend ourselves to our families and those around us, to go that extra mile, Lord, to value our values constantly, to live for you, to glorify you, to remain connected to the true vine, through whom all of our works are fed and live. We just thank you for your love for us. I didn't do the other half of the prayer. Therefore, we place our hope in you and you alone, Adonai, our God, that we may soon see the glory of your power when you will remove abominations from the earth and idols will be utterly destroyed. When the world will be perfected under the sovereignty of the Almighty, when all humanity will call on your name and turn all the earth's wicked toward you, all the world's inhabitants will realize and know that to you every knee must bow and every tongue swear loyalty. Before you, Adonai, our God, we will kneel and bow down and give glory and honor to your glorious name. We will all accept the yoke of your kingdom, and you will reign forever over us soon and forever. For the kingdom is yours, and to all eternity you will reign in glory. As it is written in your Torah, Adonai will reign forever and ever. And it is said, then Adonai shall be king over all the earth. On that day Adonai shall be one, and his name one. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher noten lanu et hadavar hachayi v'Yeshua HaMashiach. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, King of the universe, who gives to us the living word in Messiah Yeshua. Amen. Amen. And Shabbat Shalom.